Walmart, America's retail giant, a name synonymous with affordable goods and accessible shopping for millions, sent a shockwave through the entire economy. This wasn't just a minor tremor, it was a seismic event that signaled a significant shift in the financial landscape for consumers across the nation. The implications were far-reaching, touching everything from grocery bills to back-to-school shopping. The message was clear and unavoidable. Prices were about to rise, and rise significantly. The days of rock-bottom deals on everyday essentials were numbered, and shoppers were about to feel the pinch in their wallets. This wasn't a prediction, it was a stark reality setting in. The culprit, according to Walmart and many economic analysts, President Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods. These tariffs, designed to protect American industries, were having an unintended consequence, driving up the cost of imported goods, a cost that would ultimately be passed on to the consumer. Walmart's business model, built on razor-thin profit margins, meant they simply couldn't absorb the new costs imposed by the tariffs. Unlike some luxury brands with more flexibility in pricing, Walmart operated on volume, and any increase in cost had to be accounted for. Inevitably, shoppers would pay the difference. The increased costs, stemming from tariffs on goods imported from China, would translate directly into higher prices at the checkout counter, impacting the budgets of families across the country. The company's deep and long-standing ties to Chinese manufacturing, once a strategic strength that allowed them to offer incredibly low prices, had suddenly become a significant liability, exposing them to the full force of the tariffs. This reliance on Chinese manufacturing, while efficient, now made them vulnerable to policy changes beyond their control. Tariffs now acted as a direct tax on Walmart's intricate and expansive supply chain, disrupting the flow of goods and adding layers of expenses at every stage of the process. This created a ripple effect that impacted everything from raw materials to finished products. Ultimately, the checkout counter was where the bill would be settled, with everyday consumers bearing the brunt of the increased costs in the form of higher prices on their essential purchases. The timing of this price hike was particularly brutal, adding financial strain during a period when families are already stretched thin. It hit just as families prepared for summer vacations, back-to-school shopping sprees, and other seasonal expenses, placing an unexpected burden on their already tight budgets. Suddenly, trade policy, a topic often relegated to the business pages and political debates, wasn't abstract or theoretical. It was a very real and tangible hit to household budgets, directly impacting the amount of money families had available for other essential needs and discretionary spending. Walmart's message to the public was blunt and unequivocal, leaving no room for misinterpretation. The core message was simple: the cost of goods is going up, across a wide range of products and categories. And the stark reality was that every American, regardless of their income level or shopping habits, would feel the impact of these rising prices in some way. This wasn't just about Walmart's bottom line or their quarterly profits, it was about something much larger. It was about the purchasing power of every family in America, and their ability to afford the goods and services they needed to live comfortably. The announcement forced consumers, competitors in the retail space, and politicians alike to confront the true and often hidden cost of the ongoing trade war and its impact on the American economy. The long-held and cherished era of everyday low prices, a cornerstone of Walmart's brand and a promise to its customers, was now undeniably under threat, and the entire retail landscape, from small businesses to major corporations, was bracing for a significant and potentially disruptive impact. The tariffs didn't hit everything equally. They were strategically applied, targeting specific sectors and goods. The aim wasn't to disrupt the entire economy, but rather to exert pressure where it would be most felt by the trading partners. This selective approach, however, had a ripple effect, impacting a wide range of consumer products and industries. They targeted the products Americans rely on most: everyday essentials, the items that fill our shopping carts and stock our pantries, became the primary targets. This meant that the average American consumer would feel the pinch directly, as the cost of their daily necessities began to rise. Walmart, a retail giant and a bellwether for consumer spending, warned that prices would rise. Their internal analysis showed that the tariffs would inevitably lead to increased costs, which would then be passed on to the consumers. This warning sent shockwaves through the retail industry, signaling a potential shift in consumer behavior. On a wide range of goods, from the staples in your refrigerator to the items you grab off the shelves at your local pharmacy, the impact was far-reaching, affecting almost every corner of the retail landscape. From fresh produce like bananas, a breakfast staple and a healthy snack, and coffee, the fuel that gets many Americans through their day, to electronics, the gadgets and devices that have become integral to modern life, and toys, the source of joy and entertainment for children. With 80% of toys in the US made in China, the toy industry was particularly vulnerable. There were few alternatives. Shifting production elsewhere would take time and investment, leaving retailers with limited options in the short term. Families would see higher prices on essentials, video game consoles, a popular form of entertainment for all ages, TVs, the centerpiece of many living rooms, dolls, car seats, clothing, and more. The list seemed endless, encompassing a vast array of goods that Americans rely on every day. The days of cheap, globally sourced goods were over. The era of readily available, affordable products was coming to an end. Tariffs slapped a 30% tax on imports overnight. This sudden increase in costs sent ripples throughout the supply chain, impacting manufacturers, distributors, and retailers alike. Retailers couldn't absorb these costs, their profit margins were simply too thin to withstand such a significant increase in expenses. So consumers would pay more or settle for lower quality alternatives. The choice was stark: pay the higher price for the same product, or opt for a cheaper, potentially less reliable substitute. The impact was immediate and personal. It wasn't just about abstract economic theories, it was about real-world consequences for families across the country. Everyday items, not luxuries, were caught in the crossfire. The things people needed to live comfortably, and in some cases to simply get by, were now subject to these increased costs. Families faced tough choices. They had to reevaluate their spending habits and make difficult decisions about where to allocate their limited resources. Cut back, reducing their consumption of certain goods and services, pay more, stretching their budgets to accommodate the higher prices, or do without. For some families, the only option was to forego certain purchases altogether. The tariffs became a direct tax on the cost of living, a burden that weighed heavily on households across the nation. The American supermarket and toy aisle would never look the same. The familiar landscape of affordable goods had been irrevocably altered. The trade war was now a kitchen table issue for millions, a topic of conversation and concern in households from coast to coast. President Trump fired back at Walmart, dismissing their warnings and telling them to eat the tariffs. He insisted corporations should absorb the costs, not pass them to consumers. Trump's message: tariffs were a tool to protect American industry, and any price hikes were Walmart's choice, not his policy's fault. The rebuke sent a chill through corporate America. Speak out and risk a presidential backlash. Retailers were caught between economic reality and political risk. But the math was simple. Walmart's margins couldn't swallow a 30% cost hike. The president's rhetoric clashed with retail's financial reality. The disconnect between politics and business had never been starker. After Trump's public rebuke, other retailers grew cautious. Home Depot and Target avoided direct criticism, speaking vaguely about managing costs and diversifying supply chains. The fear of presidential backlash led to corporate silence. No one wanted to be the next target. Behind the scenes, companies scrambled to cope, but in public, they kept quiet. Walmart's outspokenness was the exception, not the rule. The numbers told the story. Tariffs meant real money out of families' pockets. Walmart's CFO gave a stark example. A child's car seat, once $350, would now cost $450. That's a 29% jump on a basic necessity. Multiply that across groceries, electronics, and clothing, and the impact was massive. Retailers warned they could only absorb so much. Eventually, the costs hit the consumer. Companies slashed financial forecasts, bracing for shoppers to cut back. The tariffs, meant to protect U.S. industry, were squeezing household budgets instead. Discretionary spending shrank as families prioritized essentials. The political promise that China would pay didn't match reality. At the register, it was Americans footing the bill. The price of politics was now a line item on every receipt. North of the border, Canada's retail sector was booming. In early 2025, sales jumped 6.4% year over year, with discretionary spending also up. Government stimulus checks and tax holidays fueled the surge, but fear played a role too. Canadians saw U.S. prices rising and rushed to buy before costs climbed at home. The integrated North American supply chain meant U.S. tariffs could soon hit Canada. Shoppers stocked up on electronics, clothing, and household goods. Canadian retailers benefited from American anxiety. The contrast was stark. While US consumers tightened belts, Canadians went on a buying spree. It was a unique moment, driven by both policy and psychology. The retail boom wasn't just in stores. Canadian e-commerce exploded. Over half of Canadian online shoppers already bought from foreign sites, and the US tariff crisis accelerated this trend. Canadians turned to global websites, bypassing US price hikes and finding deals abroad. The domestic e-commerce market soared, projected to hit $42.3 billion in 2025. With 77% of Canadians shopping online, the infrastructure was ready for the surge. Fear of rising prices pushed more shoppers online, where they could compare and buy globally. Canadian consumers became digital deal hunters, outmaneuvering tariff-driven inflation. E-commerce gave them an edge in a turbulent market. The trade war split North America in two. American shoppers faced rising prices, shrinking choices, and growing anxiety. The promise of low prices was gone, replaced by uncertainty and tighter budgets. Canadians, meanwhile, benefited from stimulus, tax breaks, and smart cross-border shopping. Their e-commerce savvy let them dodge the worst of the tariff fallout. The result: Americans paid more, while Canadians shopped smarter and spent more. The policy meant to protect one nation's economy created winners and losers on both sides of the border. The digital divide gave Canadians a crucial advantage. For now, the North American retail landscape was sharply divided. The future of North American retail is uncertain. Navigating this complex landscape requires a keen understanding of the forces at play and a willingness to adapt to rapidly changing conditions. Retailers are facing unprecedented challenges, and the path forward is far from clear and volatile. Economic indicators are sending mixed signals, and consumer confidence is wavering. The stock market's fluctuations reflect the underlying anxieties about the stability of the retail sector. U.S. retailers like Walmart face tough choices. They are grappling with rising costs, shifting consumer preferences, and increased competition from online giants. Absorb costs, raise prices, or overhaul supply chains. Each option presents its own set of risks and rewards, and the decisions they make now will have a profound impact on their future success. Shifting away from China is slow and expensive. The reliance on Chinese manufacturing has created vulnerabilities in the supply chain, and diversifying sourcing is a complex and costly undertaking. Consumers will feel the pain. Higher prices and limited product availability are likely consequences of these shifts. The era of cheap, imported goods may be ending. This could lead to a fundamental restructuring of the retail landscape, forcing Americans to rethink spending habits. Value and necessity will likely outweigh impulse purchases. Canadians must ask if their retail boom is sustainable. The recent surge in retail sales may be a temporary phenomenon. Once stimulus fades and tariffs ripple north, cross-border trade relationships are being tested, and the impact of tariffs is spreading throughout the Canadian economy. E-commerce and consumer agility will be key to weathering future shocks. Retailers who can adapt to changing consumer preferences and leverage the power of online channels will be best positioned to succeed. The lesson is clear. Global supply chains mean local policies have far-reaching effects. Decisions made in one country can have significant consequences for businesses and consumers around the world. Governments, companies, and shoppers must adapt to a new retail reality. The old rules no longer apply, and a new era of retail is dawning. The trade war has changed the rules. Resilience and flexibility are now essential. Businesses must be prepared to weather unexpected storms and adapt to rapidly changing market conditions. The retail world has been transformed, and there's no going back. The future of retail will be defined by innovation, adaptation, and a relentless focus on the needs of the consumer.